Yeah, Miguel and I had sushi a couple of days ago. I got to talk through everything. But one of the things that we were talking about actually is just the development of this piece and watching footage of the making of another piece and thinking about kind of all the interstitial moments that don't necessarily appear in that work, looking through them, kind of finding the value in them, piecing them together, making something new out of them. And also about the macro of what happens and what's so special about a rehearsal studio with dance. And what kind of, maybe we can say political potential, or we could say political potential for these times. We were talking about kind of the collapse of specific public institutions, but maybe even the idea of the public good, right? And so what does dance model, or what's happening in a rehearsal studio? But watching this, right, the thing that I felt was just an extreme desire to know, to be part of kind of the language community of this piece, right? Because there's so many idiosyncratic movements, and that's something that's so special about a rehearsal and that audiences don't get to be part of, is that like the whatever gesture or whatever, it suddenly has value to people. It has a history, and often it has a name or it has a sound. So this is just an invitation to just increase the number of people who have access to that language.
I'll respond to that.
Good.
Okay. The language. Well, I think this piece, more maybe than others, although, I feel like my interest in choreography has always been there. I feel sometimes like it hasn't necessarily been foregrounded as something that people discuss about the work. I think for a while people really would get caught up in the interdisciplinarity of the work, or if there's nudity in the work, people get really caught up on that. Or just kind of the thematics, and I was like, but there's choreography, you guys, and I think looking at those videos, so I was invited by the Maggie Allen National Center for Choreography at FSU to do something called an archive residency, where I got to look at like years worth of different rehearsal footage of residencies that I had there between 2006 and 2015. I think it was like 5 residencies, and I worked on like 5 pieces or something like that. And I was caught up in these interstitial moments and these kinds of like the things that are kind of happening to the side. I was caught up a lot in the dynamics between director and dancer. I was aware of the things that I wasn't saying, that I was maybe too afraid to say. I was aware of like lines of desire in the room, which is true of any room. And then I was noticing movement that hadn't made it into the final piece that I was like, well, that was probably better than what did made it into the final piece, which is also true often, I think, of rehearsal. So I was trying to recuperate some of that, but then in that, and in the conversation with the dancers about this kind of strange like time machine that we were sort of enacting, and asking the dancers to embody things, people who weren't them, also asking the dancers about their lives at these different, like what were they doing at the same time that we were at these residencies, like what was going on for them. I think the thing that just kept emerging over and over was like there was some sort of, I had to commit to the choreographic exploration. I've never been somebody who was all that interested in having my work be exclusively a kind of amalgamation of my dance vocabulary. When I moved to New York in the 90s, I feel like that was really the thing. It was like each choreographer had like their signature choreography or vocabulary, and I never felt interested enough in my way of moving to think that everyone else should move like that. But I also think there was a component of that was about like fear and self-denial. So with this piece, I was kind of using this footage as a sort of entryway into not just like movement vocabulary, but maybe a logic that has governed my work and that interests me, a kind of compulsion to move, a multiplicity, a sense of everythingness, a sense of epic that has been there, but it hasn't necessarily been located in like, these are my Miguel moves, you know? And then because choreography is thought, you can place these different things next to each other, and you know, you get stuck with the job of interpreting what the fuck that could mean. And because I always think ultimately the choreographer is the audience, right? Or the audience is ultimately the choreographer, because you're gonna have to make that kind of a synthesis happen.
Yeah. No,